Good afternoon, boys and girls. Welcome back to Horsepower Obsessed. Today we're going to go over a couple different air filter choices for your C7 Corvette and find out which one's really worth your hard-earned money. Alright guys, so for any of you out there who are familiar with my Corvette and the mods I've done to it, you'll know this already has a BMS air filter in it. Now, if you go in the Corvette forums at all, you'll know that the BMS air filter is one of the better replacement air filters you can get for the C7, but it isn't without its own drawbacks. One of the biggest ones being it's not reusable. The air filter itself is $99 from BMS. It flows better than stock. It filters probably about the same, but like I said, it's only one time usable. So once it's dirty, you throw it in the trash and you buy a new one. The stock air filter was really generic looking, really cardboardy paper junk, I guess is probably the best way to word it. I'm very surprised that in a car like this, they would ship something so generic. So one of the first mods I did with the car was buy that BMS filter, and it felt pretty good. After throwing the car on the dyno, it looks like it maybe added a couple extra horsepower here and there, but overall I really replaced it just so it would be freer flowing. Now recently I actually came across a website, TKO Performance. They sell an Attack Blue air filter that is nanofiber, which means basically it filters better than any other filter out there, and it's going to flow just as freely, if not freer, than some of the other air filters. That's a huge plus because a lot of the other air filters out there sacrifice filtration for freer flowing. And that's not really a great thing, especially when you consider the air filter's primary function is to filter air. So on their website, they list the nanofiber as, like I said, free-flowing, filtration down to the sub-micron, reusable, which is fantastic, means you can basically clean this thing with soap and water, let it dry out, and it's ready to go after it gets dirty. And the best part, it's $129. So literally $30 more than the BMS filter, and you get better filtration, better flowing, or at least the same, and reusable. Seems like a no-brainer to me. Another great feature of this filter is it's not going to cause any of these guys. No check engine lights for you guys with the 2018s or 19s. Some of the filters out there do have issues with the check engine lights with some of the newer 18s and 19 Corvettes. They were a little more sensitive on the ECU. This one promises no check engine lights and no surging of any kind. If you guys haven't seen the video I did already dynoing this car with the BMS air filter, you can actually check it right up here. It basically gave me a real good baseline power for the car. And I wanted to do that just so if anything was added from that point forward, I could see exactly how much power it really added. So in this situation, I have not changed anything yet. Once we put in that new air filter, I'm gonna go get a dyno. It's probably not gonna happen in this video, but in the future, keep an eye out for it so we can see how much power that filter really adds or takes away. Based on what I've read about the filter, odds are very good it's gonna add a little bit. We're talking probably 2 or 3 horsepower. But my main appreciation for the filter is its better filtration and the fact that it's reusable over top of my BMS air filter. Let's go ahead and get the BMS air filter out. I'm gonna show you the process. It's not necessarily the hardest thing on the planet, but I figured I'd show you since I'm gonna do it anyway. First, we're gonna remove 4 7mm hex head bolts. The first one will be right there, second one's there, third one is right there, and then the fourth one is over on the other side in this same location. Before we get too far along, I'm also going to go ahead and unplug the mass airflow sensor, just in case we don't want to break this thing. So just pull back that red safety tab, push down on the middle, and pull it right off, just like that. Next, we're going to want to take an 8mm socket and go ahead and untighten the actual clamp ring so we can remove the intake portion, just to give us a little more room to get the filter out. Next step, over on the passenger side, we're going to come down here, and on each side of the airbox there is a T25 screw. If we take out both of those, then the entire top part will fold back and we can have access to the air filter. These screws do not come out all the way. They come out a portion of the way and then they just stay in there just like that. But it is all the way out, so we can literally open it up now, as you can see, and start working on getting that air filter out. But anyway, we did get it out, and it is actually sitting over here. And surprisingly enough, it's pretty dirty. I've only had it in the car for maybe 5,000 to 6,000 miles. And if you look at that, it's pretty dirty. I mean, this area right here is what color it's supposed to be for the most part. This thing was basically bleach white whenever I got it. Anyway, let's start going over the differences between all these filters. The Attack Blue is right there, obviously blue. Looking at them from the top, the BMS or Burger Motorsport filter is about the same size at the top as the stock air filter. The Attack Blue is actually longer and a hair taller than the stock one, as well as the BMS. BMS overall, on the top at least, is the same size as the stock one, it looks like. This one's taller and slightly wider, which would obviously give a little bit more filtration surface area. Now, like I said, this is a dry nanofiber filter, so when the time comes this needs to be cleaned, there's no oil required, which is big. That's a huge thing, considering some other performance filters like K&N and stuff require oil afterwards that can cause some issues, especially with your mass airflow sensor. Plus, it's actually a lot easier to clean and keep clean whenever there's no oil on it. So in my opinion, the dry filter is always the best idea, but with this thing being nano, it's even better. I'm gonna flip all these filters over, take a look at the actual opening on the inside. Again, if we're comparing the Attack Blue with the stock one, it is a hair bigger on the open end. So the opening is actually a little bit bigger than the stock one. There's a lot of rubber here on the stock one. This one cuts some of that away to allow more filtration area. The BMS is probably the one that wins in this category. This thing is huge on the inside. It's way opened up and has very little rubber right here. So this one's got a lot of filtration area on the back end, but I actually talked to Ed about that over at TKO, and he told me that when you started cutting this away to make the mouth opening bigger, it actually was what caused some surging issues. And they didn't notice any performance gain from making this any bigger. Here is the BMS right next to the Attack Blue filter. So you can see how much bigger the top of it is. It's about 1.5 inches longer to allow much more filtration. Now, to go over each one of these a little bit more in detail, you can actually see, again, like I said, the BMS filter, I've only had it for about 5,000 miles and it's pretty dirty. It's kind of flimsy. As you can see, it's pretty easy to squeeze and pinch down. On the outside, it's just paper. Like I said, this one is not reusable. This was $99. I will link all of the filters I'm using today down in the description if you guys are interested in any of these. Since this isn't reusable, there's really not much to do with this after I pull it out and find that it's dirty other than throw it away. So as you can see, it's just paper pleats on the outside. But on the inside, they are actually reinforced pleats, which is pretty impressive for a filter that you're supposed to just throw away after you're done with. Like I said, the opening on this one seems to be bigger than the rest of them, but I was told that's not necessarily a good thing. Now, here's the stock one, and as you can see, these are really like just straight up cardboard paper pleats. Not reinforced with anything inside other than the plastic cone shape in there. No actual mesh reinforcement, but I can't crush this one at all with my hands. So this one is definitely more sturdy than the BMS filter, and overall the same size, other than the opening on the inside. A lot of this rubber was cut away to make the opening as big as possible for the BMS. Overall, this is definitely a cheap filter. I've seen them as cheap as like $6 on Rock Auto, and the fact that it says made in Thailand just kind of confirms my suspicion it's pretty cheap. And lastly, the Attack Blue filter. This one's brand new, unused, so obviously it's perfectly clean. The opening is bigger than stock, but not quite as big as the Burger Motorsports opening. Like I said, I talked to Ed about that. He assured me that is not a concern. But what's interesting to me, like I said, nanofiber, reusable. It has the metal mesh reinforcement on the outside and on the inside. So this thing is definitely gonna withstand the test of time for sure. And this one I can bend in the middle, but it's not as easy as the Burger Motorsports, but it's not as tough as the stock one either. This one overall is bigger at the ends, which allows more filtration surface area. So I think this filter is gonna do a pretty good job. Let's go ahead and get it installed. Obviously, just to get the new filter installed, it's going to be the exact same process, only reverse, so I'm not going to bore you guys with that. I'm going to go ahead and pop it in now, though. On TKO Performance website, they list the description for the Attack Blue filter as nanofiber technology for the absolute best filtration, captures dirt down to the sub-micron levels, no tuning necessary, engineered dry filter media, washable and reusable, just soap and water, no oils or chemicals needed. Creates a louder, deeper sound, no engine codes, no surging, does not void warranty, and their patent is pending. Now, out of all of that, what I think is the most interesting is the deeper, louder exhaust tones that they're claiming we're going to get. Now, my car already sounds pretty good if you ask me, but I have the Borla X pipe on there, and I had that BMS air filter in there as well. I never noticed any huge difference in sound with the BMS filter, so we're going to take this for a ride here in a second and see if it sounds any louder. So yeah, it's definitely louder. The guys over at TKO Performance really seem passionate about the air filter that they created because of that nanotechnology. Like I said, it seems like we're getting further and further away from an air filter actually filtering the air and being more so there to allow as much air in as possible for performance reasons. And honestly, as much as that's a good thing, it's also a bad thing. We want to have that air filter filtering as much dirt out of the air as possible while giving us that performance increase. And it seems like the guys over at TKO Performance really figured out a way to do that. This filter was really popular back with the C6 Corvettes as well, and for the same reason. That nanofiber material and the fact it's reusable, it really gives you a good experience. I'll link their website down in the description below, but definitely check them out if you have a C7 Corvette. This looks like the filter to go with if you're not looking for an aftermarket air intake. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's video. If you liked what you saw, give me a big thumbs up. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot them in the comment section down below or send me an email, horse.power.obsessed@gmail.com. I'm always happy to hear from you. Coming up next is the subscriber ride, so definitely stay tuned for that. And as always, guys, I'll catch you in the next one.